Hi there, welcome to the Great Updraft. You're here with Ross. I make weekly videos with tools for self-transformation, so please subscribe to my channel for the latest. In this video, I just want to introduce the Great Updraft and talk about what this is, what the website is all about. And really, it's a platform with tools for self-transformation. So I've offered these tools through courses, ebooks. I've got lots of articles on there. I've also got a newsletter there with exclusive content that you can sign up to. And now I'm branching into YouTube as well to make videos and reach more people. So really, my goal is to help you master yourself and to help you transform yourself into a healthy, both mentally and physically healthy, wise, capable, productive, benevolent person who has a fulfilling life and a passionate life, and it feels like they've reached their potential and that they're moving towards bigger and greater things. And to explain what the GU is all about, I need to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but it's really important you understand, because when we talk about self-transformation, we have to understand what we're going from and what we're moving towards as a transformation. There's like a transfiguration involved. So there's a state out of which we transform and we go into another state, or that's a very big generalization. But when we say transformation, that's the implication there. And that isn't an accident. So really the context out of which we're coming is the society that we are brought up in, because most people, when they're born into a certain society, they tend to embody the values and the desires and the goals of that society, and they are molded by that culture that they are brought up in. And once they reach a certain age, they no longer try to grow or change as people. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at Western culture and the sort of problems that brings, or are the problems that our upbringing in that culture brings when we try to reach our full potential. And that'll help you understand this process of self-transformation that I'm advocating here. And I'm just assuming that you are from a Western influenced country. You might be from a Western country, you might be from somewhere else, but chances are that your country is now influenced by Western values and a Western way of life. And if not, then it's true that Western countries are generally considered the most advanced. And so if these insights apply to Western countries, then they may well apply to yours as well, because those countries may fall into other traps, although still have similar issues to overcome. So let's look at Western society and the issues that this causes. Well, first of all, I don't want you to mistake this for like some sort of rant against Western culture and we're going to like protest and we're going to join a movement we're going to tear down Western culture and start again from scratch. I'm not going to explain the issues with that, but basically that's not my point of view. My point of view is to let you see the background on which you're operating so that you can start to make the steps you need to become this person that I'm discussing here. And what I see around me is that so many people around me who are also Western, they are totally absorbed in like mainstream culture to such an extent that the concepts that I talk about are alien to them. And they're actually not, they're not that far out there, but their mind becomes closed and they get stuck in the way that they're supposed to be under this Western culture. And that is an issue when it comes to self-transformation. And it's about recognizing where human beings are in their overall development and understanding how it works and why it works. And in becoming the person I described, the wise, the benevolent, the healthy, the passionate person, you're like a trailblazer, because you're going beyond what most people are doing in their life, and you're bucking the trend, as it were, and you're actually probably going to meet resistance on that journey. People are going to think that you're quirky or crazy or weird, out there and finding people who are like that can help you bridge that gap. And that's something that I talk about a lot. Let's talk about the norm of Western society then, just to get into the details of what I'm talking about. I mean, the first thing when I think of sort of the norm of Western society is the characters that the big actors play in films. Okay, not all of these are examples, but you know, the cheesy films, the rom-coms, that kind of thing. Those personify sort of the ideals of filmmakers and Hollywood and the film industry, which is a very rich industry, a lot of money moving around there. And that gives us a good idea of what Western society desires, or the values that we embody. And that is things like power, money, fame, sex appeal, status. And if you look at Western society as a whole, that's sort of the whole thing is structured around that. Of course, we don't all become that, but that's the ideal, right? That's like the driving force there. And yeah, that is an excellent thing to realize. What happens is, when this is the ideal of a culture, is that people live life on the surface, and all they do is they live to reach a certain level of comfort and continuity in their life. And once they reach a certain level where they feel like, I'm quite comfortable, I'm quite cushy, I've got a well-paid job, and I've got children, and I've got a certain amount of responsibility in the world, and I could quite easily go the way I'm going forever and not have to change, not be forced to change. There's no real deep growth or change involved. There's no deep questioning of life and what we're here to do, and what we as a species are here to do, and what we personally are here to do. We don't know how this human creature works, and we don't have power, we don't have passion in our lives because we're comfortable, and we are often settling for a job that we don't actually like. We don't feel any passion. We don't invest ourselves in it emotionally and spiritually. It's a means to an end, and it pays the bills, and gives us a certain amount of security. And if that's how you're living life, then you're probably going to try and dissuade people who want to go beyond that. You're going to try and dissuade them from doing that, because it threatens you, and it threatens how you see the world and everything that you're striving towards. And you may well have come across that in your journey of self-transformation so far. And this is true even for people who have like a decent career. You know, there may be programmers or a lawyer or a doctor, something like that. Unless they're maybe pushing the frontiers of science and medicine into new areas, and they're genuinely helping humanity advance in a conscious way, and they're passionate about it. It's even true for the rich and famous, the people that we idealize, the people that embody all those ideas of power, wealth, sex appeal, status, and so on. Because they're living life on a very surface level. They're looking for these shallow survival kind of desires, and they're not really tapping into what they could be. They're not benevolent. They're not living life with true passion, true creativity. And ultimately, they are missing out on a huge part of their potential as human beings. And this is, be careful this isn't a criticism. This is just to paint a picture of what is happening here, as if I'm a distant observer, which of course I'm not, but as an observer of this is what is happening. And it's actually part of human evolution. It's part of the evolution of the whole thing. The whole universe is moving forward. But this is where we're at the moment. And I don't want you to get lost in criticism. When you step beyond the mainstream, the average, what you often do is when you're taking that step, you're not quite sort of fully matured into that post-conventionality yet. what you often do is you criticize and you project out and you want to change other people, and you want the system to change overnight. You want the rich people to realize how selfish they are and all this. That's not what I'm advocating here. I'm advocating for you to take responsibility and to go beyond that and to become that person that I advocate. And perhaps in the course of human evolution, this evolution that's been going on for thousands of years, it actually started way back, way before human beings, when there was nothing at all. Everything has been evolving since then. That these kinds of lives, these mediocre lives, and with no real passion, no real involvement, no real fulfillment, we need to live that as part of our karmic process. But it is also true that without people like me who come along and say, look, here are the tools and here's how you advance beyond that, there will be people who are left behind in that process. And how many people are out there now who regret the life they've lived, and they regret, they might not even be able to articulate it, but there's something, there's like a dead part inside of them that's been there sort of slowly rotting for decades perhaps, and they can't even articulate it, but it's there, and it wants something bigger because it's part of our nature that wants to expand and grow, and that hasn't been fed. And that's where I think I can come in. So we're going to go even further into Western culture and why this is happening, where it's coming from. But just to say that following all this it'll make an ordinary, mediocre kind of life, the life that 90–95% of people have. And all of your ideas about what life is, who you are, why human beings are here in the first place, why life is here, what life even is, all of this is going to be shaped by that, by the norm, by the mainstream, and by the general level of development that human beings are at the moment. And that could be okay, but I guess if you're watching this, it probably isn't okay for you. So where does this come from? Where does this situation come from? Well, again, this is not a blame game. It's just an observation, but basically the government and big companies, they mold society to ensure that things continue as they are. And of course, that isn't strictly true because now in the 21st century, part of our culture, part of our politics, part of the laws are actually geared towards the improvement of, say, the state of women in society, animals, LGBTQ, and so on. So change is now being sort of built into the system in a institutional way. But that doesn't rule out the fact that, especially in, say, America, where big companies have a huge say in the running of the political regime in the country. And often these, if you think of phenomena like Facebook, which Facebook is one of the most used apps or websites or platforms ever to be invented, if you consider the fact that there's more human beings alive now than ever. This isn't run for the improvement of mankind. It's not run on high values. Okay, you can argue that it certainly is having an evolutionary impact in a positive way. But if you look at what the original founders of Facebook said, is that basically it was created to enslave people. It was created to addict you to the platform. And that's the kind of consciousness that we're talking about here. That's the kind of consciousness that's running the show in Western society at the moment, because it's a money-run economy where money dictates what you can do, who you can delegate to, what you can get other people to do for you. And so that is the state of affairs. These companies employ the most people, they have the most eyeballs, their messages infiltrate our lives constantly, not even directly, but indirectly as well, because it shapes our values, it shapes what we as I said, it's everything that we think about life. And this isn't just a one-way street. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying these companies are like evil masterminds. It might seem like that on the surface. What really happens is that we are animals. Human beings are animals, and we have a very long evolutionary heritage. And a lot of that evolution, a lot of those layers of the human being are quite primitive. And what we see is, if you look at the media, you look at trends, you look at the mainstreams of the most popular things that happen, what's happening is it's really our lower needs are being expressed and they're being exploited. So what's happening is these companies are responding to our dysfunction in a way, and they're creating the products and services that they know will sell in this marketplace where people's level of consciousness is not very high. So it's not blaming, it's not putting all the burden on them, but it's realizing that these companies do have a big say in it, and you want to be aware of that. You want to see what they're promoting so that you can see what you do not want in your life. Because if you follow that, you're going to end up with a mediocre existence. And just again, with the trends idea, let's think about the trends in Western culture. Coca-Cola, alcohol, beer, vodka, you name it. McDonald's, the cheapest, fastest food that money can buy. Mercedes-Benz, again, it's an image thing, it's status, it's money, it's possession, it's being someone because of the car you drive. It's Nike, it's Adidas, it's companies that produce mass clothing and do so in an unethical way. And they do it to become billionaires and to perpetuate the brand. TikTok, where again, this is tapping into the animal-like needs. It's not blaming TikTok. They're tapping into our own needs. It's our need for this instant. It's like the masking of our pain and the instant gratification involved and the hits of dopamine that we get, which are wired into nature. TikTok is just it's like a perfectly oiled machine for that, where you can sit for hours and hours and watch hundreds of videos on people doing all sorts of crazy things, and it's all animated and it's all bright and shiny and fun. That's a billions of people use this, and that shows where we are at as a species. So all of this is very lowbrow and unhealthy, and this is the most popular stuff in society. Of course, you can come up with examples of popular trends and popular companies that really do promote healthy causes and positive causes, but these are very typical examples, and they show you the issue again. And with all of this, with all of this mainstream programming that you receive, you in a sense, you become like a rat in a maze, or a hamster in a wheel, or a fish in water, because you're limited, but you don't realize that you're limited. And often our limitations as human beings aren't physical, assuming that you're physically well. It's psychological, because we're very cognitive creatures, and our psychological limits define our limits. Our ideas of life define our life. Our ideas of what is healthy defines our health in many cases. And it's our mental cage that is one of the huge barriers that we need to overcome if we want to self-transform. And education system is another component of this. Basically, you're not educated to be this person that I'm describing. You're educated to be a cog in the machine. You're educated to do certain professions, such as an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor. Notice that these are like the ideals of the education system. A doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, finance guy or girl. It's all very intellectually driven. It's about becoming white collar workers, because these are the best paid jobs in the economy. That's how you best survive, because in modern times, science and invention and human welfare and medicine and so on all count on new inventions, and they count on people like you becoming an engineer or a programmer, a doctor, or so on. And that will take society forward under the paradigm that we're under at the moment. And again, that is just to lay out the land of what's happening in the education system. And that when you're growing up, that's the ideas you're given about your career is, I'm going to become an engineer, I'm going to become an architect, I'm going to become a lawyer. And that's not the issue necessarily. The issue is the mindset that you're programmed with, which is that you're doing this for personal gain. You're doing it because it's well paid. You're doing it because it gives you status in the society. And it's really not done with benevolence in mind or self-transformation. And that's just a snippet of the barriers that we have. This is like an introduction to it. So what can we do about this? And well, that's where the great updraft comes in. I've got the solution for you. To do something like to go beyond this situation, you need to do something extraordinary. So you're not going to become this person just by following the crowd, by following the rest of the sheep. You have to do something extraordinary. You need tools. You need some sort of extra willpower. You need to have like an epiphany or a life crisis where you realize that, aha, there's more than this. There's something beyond this in human evolution, and I'm interested in it. And this isn't handed to you like a uni degree is. It's not a paint by numbers process. It's not you tick all these boxes and all of a sudden you're self-transformed. No, it's an ongoing process, and there's no rigid way. There's a direction, but there's no rigid formula or recipe involved. And I often think of the great updraft as teaching people what they didn't learn in school. And that, again, it ties into the idea that we need sort of this extra, we need extra tools, and we need to go beyond. We need to do something special to do this. With that said, let's look at the tools that I offer at the Great Updraft. So I talk a lot about psychology in my resources, my articles, ebooks, and courses. And I talk a lot, particularly about developmental psychology. Developmental psychology ties into what I've been talking about here, about the levels of human existence and the development of human beings and the cosmos at large. We also study society and culture and how they've evolved over time. And one argument I make over and over again is that we actually have an amazing modern culture compared to what, like the Middle Ages, for example, and compared to tribal levels of human existence. So our modern culture is incredible. That doesn't mean it doesn't have limitations that we need to go beyond. But when you study society and culture and how things are evolving, there's a clear direction involved. And in going beyond the mainstream, we're always part of the evolution anyway, but we're consciously part of it, and we're actually pushing it forward. We're pushing everyone forward in doing that. So that's where society and culture sort of ties into the psychological tools part. We also look at what stops you from becoming exceptional, and both externally, as I've been talking about here, and internally as well. I've not been talking about the internal so much here, but that's certainly a huge part of the work. A huge component of the work at the Great Updraft is spirituality, and I look at it from an advanced point of view. This is not mythic level spirituality. This is contemplative practice and sort of modern, postmodern spirituality. And then I just look at practical tools like mastery and learning. How do we learn? How do we become exceptional in an area of life? How do we develop useful skills that can help us change the world and reach our potential? We do mindfulness work, we do emotional awareness work, and we also talk about productivity, as well as many other tools to come. I also talk about career and vision, because this is an enormous part of going beyond the mainstream and really living beyond the mainstream on a permanent basis, is building a career, a benevolent career, a career that gives you passion, it gives you freedom, and it gives you creative control. We talk about this, and it's just a really, really important component of this being this person and living this life that I'm advocating. So if you're looking to live a life that's fuller and greater than 90 to 95% of people right now, then the Great Updraft is for you. So do subscribe to my channel to stay up to date with my work, and serious thanks for listening to the entire video. And this is a sign that you are on the road to self-transformation. Take care.